Welcome to the Creative Brew, helping you keep your creative juices brewing. We're giving out chunks of insight, motivation, and practicality for your creative journey. If you're a creator, athlete, or entrepreneur, luck can only get you so far. Having the right skill sets are critical in your success. All Skill No Luck makes handcrafted, custom-designed flannel wear, made in the United States and based here right in Oceanside, California. They pride themselves on quality, creativity, and attitude. The perfect brand for the Creative Brew. Use promo code CreativeBrew10 and get 10% off and free shipping within the United States. You can check them out at allskillnoluck.com. My next partner is Elevate Coffee Trading, and if you appreciate specialty coffee, enjoy outdoor adventure, and love helping elevate the lives of children around the world, then you're going to love Elevate Coffee Trading. Their mission is to extract hope through love, coffee, and adventures. There's free shipping in the United States, and every bag of coffee helps sponsor health and education for children in coffee-producing countries and in areas of need in the United States. You can use promo code Elevate21 on your next order, and you can follow their journey on social media at Elevate Coffee Trading. Or you can visit online at elevatecoffeetrading.com, and let's start extracting hope together. And this show is brought to you by Tennessee Grappling Apparel, based out of the Knoxville area. Lifestyle wear for the modern wrestler or grappler. Use the promo code CB10 on your next purchase at TennesseeGrapplingApparel.com. To a new episode of the Creative Brew, giving you insights on your creative journey. Today, we have a special guest today for Mortal Kombat fans, the one, the only, John Turk, the man behind Subzero, as well as other characters. And like I said, I'll let him sort of share his journey. And it's so cool. Like I said, we got to meet between, like I said, we met at Throwback Games. So
Right.
Definitely had a sort of a common connection right there. And I said, met, and we're here now. So I'll let John sort of share his story, and it'll be a mix of different things. So, we'll talk about what he's doing, what he's got going on, and a little bit of Mortal Kombat, a little bit of wrestling, a little bit of martial arts, fitness, all that stuff sort of wrapped up into this episode. So without further ado, this is John Turk.
Hey, what's up, everybody? Yeah, so things are good. Life's good. I'm getting older, and it's been an interesting journey, the entire Mortal Kombat experience and what led up to it. But it started back when, gosh, I was probably I started in wrestling actually when I was in grade school. My neighbors were really, really into wrestling. One of their brothers was an Olympic wrestler, and it just kind of got the whole neighborhood into wrestling. So, and I just remember when I first started, they were obviously been wrestling a lot longer than I had. I kept getting my butt kicked, and it just was a really eye-opening experience. That, hey man, I really got to get better at this. So I stayed with it. I kept wrestling, and as I got older, I got into up into, I'd say probably 8th grade. I didn't go really long in it, but I wrestled from when I was probably 9 years old to like 13, but I kept getting skin infections. And I think you and I had talked about this, and I got impetigo, I got staph infection, I got ringworm, and I just kept getting all these things. And as a young kid, I go into school and I had these big patches around my face. You start to get teased. And my parents after a while were like, this wrestling just isn't working out for you because you're getting all these skin infections. And then at one point we would have this game where we would take erasers and we would rub it on our arm, and whoever could withstand the pain the longest would win. And I remember just rubbing my skin completely off my arm, and then, actually lost to the one guy, just kept going, and he rubbed his skin off even more. But I remember I got an infection from that, and my parents were just like, you're not going to be wrestling anymore. There's just too many things going on here. But I love combat sports, and I was already in Pop Warner football, and so I wanted to get into something else, and that's what kind of led me to martial arts, Taekwondo. So I really got into that, and it just kind of took over my life, and I just kept competing in tournaments. I got up to black belt, and I just it was a real great journey. It taught me a lot of discipline. In the beginning, it was, I had a combination. I knew how to wrestle already. Now I had martial arts, and I started to hang around with some of the wrong guys who were kind of troublemakers, and I got into a lot of fights. And after a while, I said, this isn't the way to go. This is kind of wrong. And I just kept with the competitive spirit of it. And as time went on, I just I decided at one point I had hurt my leg really bad in a tournament. I had a guy sweep me from the front, and I was probably about, I'd say 18 years old at this point. So I started when I was like 13, right after I quit wrestling. So for about 5 years solid, I was competing and doing all this, and just blew my leg out really bad. And then I didn't get a surgery right away because the doctor told me I'm going to need all this rehab. I would be in a wheelchair for 4 months, because back when I heard it, which was like 1982, they didn't have the surgeries they have now for like a scope and things like that. They would literally slice your whole leg wide open and give you these repairs that way. But it was something that I didn't want to do. And I said, hey, can I get through this without having a surgery? And they said, yeah, but you're going to have an extremely unstable knee. So I also had torn cartilage. It would always hurt. And I tried to go back to martial arts, and my leg would just constantly give out on me. I would just go to throw a kick, and I could just feel it shift and come apart. So I knew I needed to have something done. So I said, I'm going to wait for surgery to catch up. So I wanted to compete in something. So I picked up weightlifting, bodybuilding. And so I started doing that, and I ended up winning collegiate Mr. Illinois. I took third in third in collegiate Mr. America. And then I took second runner-up in Mr. Illinois. And then I won the Mr. Midwest of Police and Fire. So bodybuilding was doing really well for me. So the thing is with bodybuilding, and there's so many drugs in it, and I didn't want to follow that route that a lot of guys were doing. And in order to compete at a higher level, I would have to take more and more and more of it. And I was really into my body and my health and my fitness, and I just didn't want to do that. So I continued on with my fitness journey, and I just stuck with weightlifting and working out with martial arts still. I ended up having my knee fixed, and I was able to, continue with that and carry on. And then I became a policeman in 1990. And about 5 years in, I just, everybody kept telling me, hey man, you should get into, acting, or you should do modeling. And I was like, no, I'm not going to do that, but I just kept hearing it over and over and over. So I said, what the heck, I'm going to give it a try. So I got an agent in Chicago, and they sent me on this audition for Mortal Kombat, because that's where Midway Games is. They're based in Chicago. So I went into the studio, and I already had the look they wanted, because the creator of it, his name was John Tobias, and the other guy was Ed Boon. John Tobias was the graphics designer of it, and Ed Boon was the mind behind it. And they showed me the image of the character that they wanted, and I looking at the illustration, I was pretty spot on. But what I think really got me the job was my martial arts background. So when they asked me to do all these kicks and all these different styles of martial arts, I was able to do them. So they were real happy about that. And what happened was I came in at Mortal Kombat 3, and Mortal Kombat 1 and 2 was done by another guy who they ended up having a big falling out with. And I don't want to mention any names, but I ended up taking over all the roles he did. And then when they found out I could do all these other moves, and I could do flips and kicks and everything, they started throwing different costumes at me, and they said, hey, try this on, try this on. So I ended up doing all the ninjas in Mortal Kombat 3, Ultimate Mortal Kombat. And then Subzero had done so well that they ended up having a game called Mortal Kombat Mythologies. And it didn't do real well because it was really hard, and it was just all these secret moves, and nobody could get past certain levels. So that one didn't do real well. But then they made more games after that, and then they ended up dropping all the what are called digitized characters. So like if you were to go into the studio, Quantal, they would image you, like say if it was a wrestling game, they would videotape you wrestling, and then they would digitize your image into the game. But now they do everything CGI, which is computer generated image. So they got rid of all the actors. But what's happened over the years is people still like the old game, and they like seeing actors and they like seeing people in the role. And the CGI is cool because they can do a lot of things, but when you can actually meet the person in the game, it makes it that much more enjoyable. Like, hey man, that's the guy in the game. So I think that's why it's survived all these years, especially with a lot of us that were actors in the game. And now you have your 30-year anniversary this year. So a lot of places are asking us to come out and do meet and greets with fans and things like that. So I just found that over the years, Mortal Kombat has been great for me. I've met so many people doing it, and every one of the fans in Mortal Kombat has been very gracious, very generous. I mean, you saw a lot of them that were coming up to the table. They're just really laid back people, a lot of them. But one of the things I try to do is I try to inject fitness in some way, because I just noticed the youth in our time, especially a lot of the younger ones, they're so unfit, and it's because they're stuck behind a computer all day, or they're on their phones all day. And I'm just seeing more health problems with the younger generation that were usually things that would happen to older people, like a lot of diabetes in young kids, a lot of kids with metabolic disorders. And I just try to reach out to them and say, hey man, I feel bad for them in a way, because so many of them are having these ailments and these illnesses. And I've noticed, as I'm signing autographs at some of the conventions, some of them would pull me aside and say, hey, I got this, and I know you're really into health and you talk about working out a lot. What can I do? And a lot of them have these disorders, and it's just really disheartening to see so many kids at a young age. And I honestly believe it's because of the sedentary lifestyle. So I really try to promote a healthy lifestyle. I try to promote health and fitness, because I really feel like with working out, and I'm sure you're the same way, we both talked about it, like my diet's probably spot on 80% of the time, and 20% of the time I eat junk. And I think when you exercise, you can get away with that and still have a really good physique, a really good athletic ability, instead of being 100% spot on. But I think when you don't do that, it limits you in how you can eat. And if you're already a bad eater and then you combine that with not exercising, it really is a recipe for disaster for health as you age. So I'm just trying to get everyone to be more aware of being health conscious and thinking about their future, because I see so many people that come to me as a trainer as well now, because that's what I do. As I kind of converted when I left the police department. I converted when I was on the police department. I was one of the heads of the fitness instruction. So when policemen needed to pass we had these quarterly fitness tests you had to do, and a lot of them couldn't even bench press their own body weight, or they couldn't do sit-ups to a certain amount, and I would have to train them to get them to be strong enough to do it. I would help administer tests to the new recruits, and even our quarterly fitness tests. So I got into fitness through the police department, and my degree was actually in exercise physiology and nutrition when I went to Illinois State. So that's kind of how my fitness journey started. Is I just started at a young age. My neighborhood was always competitive. Everybody was really into sports, and no one was into drugs. In fact, like when I just think back to my childhood, if anybody took drugs, it was really looked down on it. So I really am lucky that, I grew up with a mom and dad. I grew up in a neighborhood that was very, proactive for sports and fitness and health. And from a young age, I was taught to really take care of my body and be smart about that. So as I've gotten older, I'm 60 years old now, and I just feel like I feel healthy. And I just want people to understand that you can live such a better life, especially into your older years, by just being, you don't have to be a fitness fanatic like me or like you. You can just be someone who really focuses on just a good overall plan and follow it. Be consistent, stick to it, eat right, and exercise, moderately, and you could live a long, healthy life. And I just see so many people now that are coming to me in their retirement years now. Now you have the young kids getting sick, and now you have the people in their retirement years, and they're falling apart, and they've worked super hard their whole life, but they've neglected their body. And here they are with all this money, and they're in and out of the hospital. And the only reason they're coming to me is because the doctor said, hey man, you gotta exercise. And it's sad to see because now that youth is experiencing it, I'm wondering if these people are so messed up in their older age, now the youth is starting out already messed up. What are they going to be like in 20 or 30 years? So my message is really to get out there is more of about health and fitness and just keeping people focused on themselves. And so many of us, we let life take over and we let our jobs take over, our families take over, which are important. But in the long run, the most important thing is ourselves. And I don't mean that to sound narcissistic or self-centered. I mean it in that, what good can you do if you're always sick and nursing injuries or nursing your health to help family out or to help friends out and just be a better person, So I think when you feel healthy, you're going to be healthy as far as your attitude. You're going to be healthy in your relationships. But I know that when I've been in pain or when I've been sick, I'm not someone who you want to be around, and I think that goes with most people, right? When we're sick and we're not feeling well, we're just not fun to be around. I know I'm a big baby when I'm sick. I'm like, oh, hon, take care of me. I don't feel good. She's like, man, you're a big baby. But, I just think my main message is with all of this is I try to promote, health and fitness and get people to be more conscious. So. Yeah. But it's been a great journey, and I love Mortal Kombat. And I'm trying to get in the movie right now. I think I was mentioning to you, I do a little acting also on the side. I just did a film called Wolfhound that was out this summer. I played a Nazi colonel in that. I was one of the main bad guys. So acting's been slowly getting more productive for me. But I'm married. I'm a Christian, and I limit myself to the roles I'll do. Like I won't do any roles that involve sex scenes or makeout scenes, just out of respect for my wife. And so I think that's limited me in a lot of stuff that I can do. So mostly I just play a lot of bad guys or, stuff like that, which, it is what it is, right? You gotta do what you're called for to a certain extent.
Yeah, that's true. Hey, well, audiences tend to go for the bad guys now. It's not it's not so black and white like it used to be. Like you had the bad. I think a lot of them going for bad guys now. They're rooting for the bad guys.
They even made like Dark Knight. I was in a Dark Knight. I had a couple scenes in there. They even, when you think about it, the original. Love the original Batman show with back in the 60s and 70s, and he was just a straight up, him and Robin were the good guys. And when you look at the Dark Knight, he was really kind of almost an anti-hero. He was a very dark figure, a dark character, so different from the original Batman. But I mean that was cool. It was fun watching it. I mean, he had a good side, but he also had a real bad side, an evil side. So I think a lot of that is the way that they're kind of turning a lot of the superheroes now. They're making them kind of have a little dark side, more humanistic instead of just straightforward, I'm a good guy, So it adds more interest and more creativity to the character development. So you can't just be one dimensional when you have to create a role or, come up with a character for, someone that's been around for a long time, like, Batman or Superman or, one of my favorites was the Green Hornet. You remember the Green Hornet with Bruce Lee? Yeah, I used to love that show, man. It was great. But yeah, so that's pretty much, the way it's been. And my website I sell workouts on right now is called The Fearless Fitness. And like a lot of it is basic workouts, and then you can get up to advanced workouts. But I just try to, and I have little nutrition programs on there too, that you can just buy their basic programs. And I try to make it like cost effective for people, because a lot of people can't afford it and they don't have equipment or whatever. So that's kind of what I did with those. Is they're just PDFs that you buy, and you get emailed, and they have videos in them where I'm demonstrating the movement, and everything's real laid out in a real good PDF format. So
that's cool.
Yeah.
So do you find, and I've noticed, just all the things that you've been talking about between, movies and fitness and even your values and everything, as far as what your beliefs are, do you ever feel, I mean, even being in, movies, do you feel like, okay, that is, you're taking certain roles because it's sort of like in direct confliction with it's conflicting with your values? I mean, do you ever feel like, I mean, where did that belief sort of come from? I mean, is that something that you've always sort of had ingrained, as far as, this is my principles, and this is what what I believe in, I'm going to stand by it,
Yeah.
and pay the price for it? Or is that something that sort of developed over time? I didn't know, like, even when you being a cop, I didn't know if you had that
Yeah.
sort of black and white, or I know in Chicago it can be a little gray, but
Yeah.
I just didn't know what you thought about that.
Yeah. Well, to answer your question right off the bat, as far as there's history to that, but I wasn't always that way. I grew up. I was never really a bad kid, but what I did is I always pushed it to the edge. Do you know what I mean? Where I would do it and I would be bad enough to where I wouldn't get in bad, a lot of trouble, but just enough where people go, "What are you doing?" And then I would back it off. I had a really strict father. So I had an interesting upbringing. I had a Muslim father from the Middle East, and I had a Christian mother from, the United States. And my dad came over on a Fulbright scholarship, and he ended up going to Oklahoma State University. He got a degree in engineering. And then he met my mother when he became one of the heads of the Wisconsin Highway Department. So my father was always really strict. His dad was um, general in the Turkish military. So he was raised in a third world country, back in the 20s, by a militaristic father. And if you don't know if you're familiar with any Turkish history, but it can be brutal at times with, some of the wars that they would get into and things like that. And that's the mentality my dad had, and I can remember growing up, I just knew that I couldn't push the envelope because my mom would just have to say, "Wait till your dad gets home." And man, I'll tell you, I could feel my butt tingle because it would be, I would be getting, I'd be getting whipped, but it kept me in line. And I think there were times where I could have went off the limb and it did some really stupid stuff. But in the back of my mind, I always pictured my father, and it wasn't his words of wisdom. It was the fear of what he would do physically. I mean, he would never like punch me and beat me up, but man, I'll tell you, he would give me the whipping pretty good. And I always was in the back of my mind, but I never was like a God guy. I always looked at God because my father was Muslim and my mother was Christian. I looked at, there's no such thing as God. Here's two people I respect highly. They're both intelligent and they can't agree on it. But I became someone who just kind of lived his life with reckless abandon. I loved sports, and when I played football, I won 110%. Everything was my head first, and just smash as hard as I could. When I was in martial arts and fights, I would go all out as hard as I could, and I ended up getting injured all the time. My neck got screwed up, my shoulders, my elbows, my knees, and I ended up with so many surgeries. I had my shoulder reconstructed, my elbow, I avulsed a tendon off the bone. I had 9 knee surgeries. I got 40 stitches in my chin, 7 in my eye. I've had 4 concussions. It's just, the list goes on. And I just had no respect when it came to sports for my body. And so over time, when I look at the way I grew up, I just thought, I felt like I was my own God and my destiny was controlled by me, which it is obviously to a certain extent, but I really didn't feel like there's the man in the sky watching over us, and we got to be good people. And I thought, I'm a good person. I didn't murder anybody, I didn't do this, and I don't steal, I don't do anything crazy or hurt people. So I never really worried about, am I going to go to hell, or am I going to, any of that going to happen? But as time went on, I met my wife, and she would talk about God and Jesus, and I'm like, whatever, hon, but she wasn't really into it a lot. She was raised a Baptist, but my wife was an exotic dancer when I met her, and I was the same thing through college. I helped pay for my college that way. I mean, I'm really getting kind of deep here, but so when I first met her, I was like, hey, that's cool, I did it, I know what it's about. And so you're getting a little history. I wasn't always Mr. Clean and Green, but I just, we fell in love, and life was great, and we had a great relationship. And then in 2009, I had a friend die, and it really kind of freaked me out. He was my age, and he dropped out of a heart attack at 43 years old, and he had 2 brand new babies, and it just was really disheartening to me and my wife as well at the time, because we used to go out with him and his wife, and he was did a lot of the same things I did. He was a trainer with me at the gym I worked at, and so it really kind of hit home. But I had a really crazy experience where when I left, my wife had a demonic experience, and I never would have believed in this stuff until I saw it. And then I also I saw an entity, and it really freaked me out. And being a policeman, when this, went on, I always thought with a logical mind. I was a detective. I got promoted to detective as the years went on. So I never believed in it. I always thought there was a rational explanation. So when I saw this entity, I just rationalized it out of my head. And when I saw what my wife was going through, I rationalized that out of my head too, just because I didn't want to believe it. I didn't want to believe that the spiritual world existed. But as time went on, she became a Christian, and she said, I'm going to follow Jesus. And if you want to follow Jesus, or you don't, I understand if you want to leave. And I just, right when she said that, I'm like, you know what? I didn't buy into this marriage to be, Jesus freak. I don't want anything to do with that. And so we were almost gonna, end our relationship at that point. And one day I just woke up and I said, I said, you want to believe in Jesus, and I really, don't know what to say about that, but I'll just tell you this. I'm going to stay, but I'm going to prove your Jesus wrong. And I'm going to prove to you that he doesn't exist. He's a fairy book tale. And then that's it. That's it. So I'm one of those kind of people. And when I was a policeman, you can ask anybody, when I had tackled something, I went 120%. I was 120% to prove to her that Jesus didn't exist. And after reading the Bible and doing tons and tons of research, because I was a science guy, my degree was in science, and make a long story short, I ended up believing in it. A lot of the things I thought about were, one of the questions I had is, why do good things happen to bad? Why do bad things happen to good people? How is there a God? But I always wondered, where is Hitler right now? Where is Mussolini? Where are all these people that were horrible human beings? There has to be some creator there that these people are going to have to report to, because if those people, nothing happens to them, where does the morality come from? Where does it mean for Quantel to be a good man? Where does it mean for John to be a good man? It really means nothing then. It's all irrelevant. It's relative. So when I looked at human behavior and I looked at sin and all that stuff, it just made sense to me that there's something innate inside all of us that says this is right and this is wrong. And we can say it's our society, and it's to a certain extent it is. But what makes me right and you wrong if you're a child molester? Because why is my right and yours wrong? Do you follow what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. Because if there is no God, everything you do and everything I do is relative. It doesn't mean anything. So what am I to say that my truth is truth and yours isn't? So there has to be a moral compass that is someone or something that started it. And God, when you read the Bible, is the moral compass. He talks about sin all through it. And Jesus even talks, when I got into reading why, I read Islam, I looked into the Quran because my dad was Muslim. And then I looked into Judaism, I looked into Buddhism. And it just, to me, when I looked at, all the religions, and I don't mean to be bashing in them, there's good things about every one of those religions, but the one thing I found was Christianity and Judaism, the Bible, the Old Testament, the New Testament, they're internally consistent, and they talk about prophecy through the whole thing, what's going to happen in the future. And so much has come true and has been predicted, and there's been miracles throughout the Bible. And when I looked at the geography and I looked at a lot of the scientists now, they turn to the Bible for geographical truth, and they find things based on what the Bible is saying. The Bible will say this is here, and then they go and look and they find it. And when you look at things like the Dead Sea Scrolls that were found, back, I think it was the 1920s, these kids came across it. The Bible we have today is accurate to these ancient scripts they found that were thousands of years old. So, the book is consistent that we got handed down to us. And Quantel, this discussion could go on for hours, but what I did is I investigated everything myself through like scientific, psychological, and also moralistic.
Mhm.
And I just came to believe that, for me, it was Jesus was the answer. He was the way, the truth, and the light. And I just think that a lot of people don't like that, because when I look at today's society, people get offended for everything and anything. You say something and someone gets offended. If you don't do something, somebody gets offended. It's the woke culture now. Everyone's offended for everything. And I think that religion especially offends people, because they don't like being told what to do. And that's what God and the religions do. But more specifically, Christianity is exclusive, so it's very offensive to people. So a lot of people stay away from it because of, honestly, I think it's just the woke mentality of everything's going to offend me. And especially if you tell me that you're exclusive and I'm not going to be let in, or somebody else is going to be let in, it's the whole mentality of, I don't like that. That offends me. And God is offensive, because God says you can do this, you can't do that. And you have the 10 commandments, and you have so many other things. And Jesus was all about love. So to make a long story short, I wasn't always a moralistic guy, I mean, listen, I was a male dancer. You know what goes along with that. I mean, I was a player. I was a big time player. So for me, not to have any sex scenes in movies, and for me not to want to make out with another woman, number one, it would hurt my wife. She told me I wouldn't want to see you do that. But number two, I just wouldn't feel right doing it, because it's a physical thing. And as much as people want to say, oh, you're just acting, look at what happened with Brad Pitt and Jennifer Aniston. Look what happened with Billy Bob Thornton. I mean, the list goes on of all these celebrities that ended up with their co-stars. So I totally understand where she's coming from. And so I drew a line in the sand, and I said, I'm not going to do these types of roles. And so that's where that kind of came from. It obviously went off on a tangent, but my Christian belief system now is what drives a lot of what I do. I think in the world today, people got to be, we got to be giving out more love than we giving out hate now. It's just kind of crazy when you think about it. It's like we're so divided, and I hate seeing it. And I try not to talk about politics. I used to, and I don't like to, because I just ended up getting arguments with people, and I don't want that to happen. I want people to come together. And I just think that, especially now, politics is just so dividing, and religion's dividing. And I'm not going to walk around and tell people and hit them in the head with the Bible, but I want people to know this is what I believe. And if you want to understand or know why I believe that, I'll tell you. But I'm not going to go up to people and go, you're going to hell and you're going to do this. I think that's up for, I'll plant a seed, and I think it's up to God to water it and give people the chance to open their own hearts up to the gospel and what God is all about. But people have to be ready for that. So I can't walk up to someone and just say, hey, man, do you know Jesus? A lot of people do that. That's just not me. And I don't feel right doing that, because when I wasn't saved, I didn't like it at all. I didn't like that people came up to me and said, hey, man, do you know Jesus? I was aggravated. And I think a lot of that was because, number one, I wasn't ready to hear the gospel. And number two, a lot of these people are hypocrites, and I didn't like it. A lot of Christians, when I see them, they're complete hypocrites. And I think it gives God a bad name. I think it gives a lot of Christians a bad name. And I just think it's wrong. So the last thing I'm going to do, from what like even the Bible says, don't point out the speck in someone else's eye when you got a log in your own eye, right? And that's the way I see it. I don't want to point out other people's faults or what's going to happen with them when I'm just as full of sin still to this day. I do things that are sinful, and that's what repentance is, and that's what asking God for forgiveness is, because I think that we're all sinners, and we're all in this life together. And it's really, really ultra important for all of us to just try and get along. And there's days where I have, fits of anger, and I just try to get it under control. And my wife is so good, in my corner of pulling me back in and, hey, hon, you can't be like that, And I have my things that I help her with. But I think that with her, she's really helped me a lot with my demeanor, my ability to communicate with people, my ability to be more understanding when somebody does something. And I get angry or I get upset. She's like, hey, maybe they were thinking this, you know. I'm like, you know what? You're right. That could be, you know, because let's face it, when we're angry and we're upset and we hold animosity towards others, forgiveness really isn't about the other person forgiving us. It's about us forgiving them so we don't hold on to the anger. Because when you hold on to anger and hate, it can become very destructive to your own self. And I think that's what, you know, like I'm sure you've experienced racism. And if you held that anger towards someone forever, that's going to hurt you more than anybody. It's not going to hurt that other idiot. It's going to hurt you. So it's like, you can't walk around and hold that animosity towards people, just like I can't hold it towards somebody who's done something wrong to me. And I think that's the biggest lesson I've learned from all of this is I can't hold on to anger. I got to get rid of it. Otherwise I'm going to be miserable. My body's going to fall apart, stress, cortisol, you know, the whole thing works.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's kind of how my whole journey started, you know, with the whole, I don't want to say morality because I'm not this big moral guy, you know, I mean, but I have a certain compass about me that, you know, knows right and knows wrong and really tries to live by what I believe. And like anyone else, man, I slip up. And if somebody tells me I slip up, I'm like, hey man, you're absolutely right. Biggest thing in life is owning up to something when you're wrong. And my wife's been great with that too, you know, and you know what? Also apologizing even when you're right. You know, I mean, think about it. Like, I think with my marriage and, you know, you talk about your wife. I think that one of the biggest things with men and women is we tend to, when we're married, is we hold on to, I'm right. No, you're right. No, I'm right. And when you can just let go of that and say, you know what, you know, maybe I shouldn't have said it that way, even though you're right, and you apologize, the other person is so much more accepting. How many times have we, you know, like when you look at a lot of athletes and they've screwed up and they come on camera and they sincerely apologize, everyone forgives them, unless you're Michael Vick and you torture a dog, right? Yeah. I mean, people look at that kind of stuff, and that some of the things you look at and you say, you know, this is, some people can't forgive, but I look at, like, you know, pretty much if anyone comes forward and sincerely apologizes and asks for forgiveness, any good person or any person with the right mind is going to sit back and go, you know, you're right. No worries, man. Everything's good. And I think that's the most important thing. If we all learned a little forgiveness and a little bit of being apologetic, I just think there would be a lot more peace in the world, you know. And I think politics is just not, I don't think any of our politicians are good. I think all over the world, they're just out for themselves and they're bringing division between everybody. And I just hate seeing it. I don't even watch it anymore on TV. I try to focus on, you know, sports and fitness, and I watch a lot of wrestling. I love wrestling, like we were talking about. And it's just the competitiveness of it all. And I like good sportsmanship. You know, one of the things I love is, like, I like the guy, like some of these guys in I love Cale Sanderson is like one of my favorite athletes, and I look at what he's accomplished, and he's always such a stand-up guy, you know. Mm-hmm. And when you go into football, I love Larry Fitzgerald and the old quarterback Wilson from I forget his first, Russell Wilson. You know, you look at these guys that are just stand-up guys, and they got all the reason in the world to be, you know, conceited or, you know, arrogant, and they're like the nicest guys in the world. And to me, that says so much. I love George St. Pierre. He's another guy. He's just a really nice guy. So I love when athletes compete and they just, you know, bang it out. And then afterwards they, you know, give each other a hug and a high five and they move on. I'm just not one to do all the trash talking. I never was. And I'm just not a big follower of that. Like, if somebody's a trash talker, they might be great at what they do, but I like sportsmanship. And I just think that it's getting lost today in sports. It's becoming more about me and how can I generate more, you know, likes, and I look at like Conor McGregor, you guys, he's a great fighter, but I just don't like the way he goes about things, you know, and I'm just not me, I guess. So, but yeah, so that's really about how we got off onto that one. I don't know. I just went all kinds of directions.
Oh yeah, that was it felt like you had a lot to say on that one. Felt like you had a lot on your mind.
Yeah, I did. Yeah.
Well, you know what? I mean, right now, I mean, I know and that's a very interesting, and that's honestly that is really part of the journey. You know, and I think that's what makes it unique, that even everybody that I bring onto the show, everybody's different. Everybody that we encounter is different. They have their own journey and where they got to thus far, and through the good and bad. All the things that you've had experience has led you to this point. And there is, like I said, honestly, there's nothing good or bad about it. It's just your experience and how it formed, your beliefs and how it shaped you. And I think that's for a lot of people. I think once we can realize that and feel like we're not, I'm right and you're wrong. It's just, it's all relative. It's your experience. And the only thing I can do is figure out ways to understand where you're coming from and just be compassionate with it. I mean, I don't have all the answers. And I'm now, even now, I'm still searching and getting insight from other people and getting their stories and so all these things can sort of form the beliefs or maybe the experiences and things that that I can sort of deep dive into and maybe see things from a different perspective. I think that's really what makes people like you or just people in general. It can be enriching once we understand their story. Like I said, we don't have to, agree with everybody's, beliefs or religion. We don't have to, but I do want to understand where you're coming from and be respectful, be compassionate of it. So yeah, it's definitely something we could probably talk about for another episode.
Politics and religion, right? That can go on for hours.
That'd be fun. So right now, I mean, what things what things are inspiring you right now? It could be something simple or something maybe complex, maybe something you've encountered recently. Anything that's when you wake up in the morning and you sort of it gives you inspiration. What's been those things?
Well, I think mostly is one of the things I always want to feel good in my skin, and I for a long time I had a lot of just my joints were so screwed up, and I'd get up and then in the morning when I was in my 40s, I'd feel like I was 90 years old. My back, my elbows, my knees, everything hurt. And I thought, wow, I'm only 40 and I feel like this. I know what's going to be like when I'm like 80 or 90 years old? I'm going to be like, a big stiff board walking around. And I just started to really wanted to take control of what was going on inside of me. And I ended up getting all these tests done, blood work done to try and figure it all out. And I finally did. At 60 years old, I feel far better than I did when I was 40. And each morning I get up, I just have this motivation to just try to keep getting better and better. And the other thing too is I want to, as I get older, I tend to get a little more time on my hands just because I'm more established. I want to start creating workout equipment, and I have ideas for several pieces of equipment that I want to get to market. And I'm learning that whole process now of patenting and getting what's called a protocol out there and getting things on the market and how to market it. So that's kind of what's driving me there. The other thing is man, I just look forward to each day, and I look forward to my marriage with my wife. We have a great time. We laugh, we joke. So I can't really put my finger on any one thing, but I got to say that health is a big driver with me. I've seen so many people, just friends that are dying that didn't take care of themselves. I'm at that age now where, 60 years old, you start to see kids from your, high school that I went to that I watch on Facebook. And next thing you know, there's a, rest in peace thing next to their name. And I'm like, wow, I can't believe that, It's the image I have of them, even though, and then all of a sudden they show the picture and, they're obviously a lot older. But it just really makes me realize the frailty of life, and it just goes by so fast. I can remember when I was in high school, it was vividly, in my mind, and it just went by so fast. And I remember when I was a kid, and I remember I was 15 and my dad turned 50 at the time. And I remember saying, wow, man, Dad, you're 50 years old. That's old, and now I'm 10 years older than that. And it's just, I watched my mom die, my dad die. I've watched so many friends pass. other relatives. And it's just made me realize that I got to get up every morning and give thanks. And that's the one thing I do is I get up, I give thanks. I ask, count my blessings for what I have. And I just try to be grateful. I just call it gratitude. I get in the car and I drive and I just give my thanks, my gratitude for everything I've been given in life. And at times when things are bad, I try to always think of the positive side, and the positive side is actually someone else's negative. I could be far worse off than so-and-so. And it's unfortunate that, this person's, ill fortune in life is my motivator in life. And I feel really bad for a lot of disabled veterans. My heart goes out to them because they fought for our freedom and now a lot of them are messed up. So, I give thanks to those guys. But, my main thing is just trying to be positive, getting up every day and getting rid of all the negativity and stress, and just realizing sometimes I get overwhelmed, like with this move, it gets overwhelming at times, but I just got to say, all it is a move. What am I overwhelmed about? It's going to be done one day and life's going to go on. And if something bad happens, I just deal with it, and I deal with it the best I can. And that's kind of how I motivate myself and I approach it. And the other thing too, is if I have something in the works, like a project, and I really want to achieve it, and it could be something in sports, or it could be like my, fitness equipment I want to create. There's no room for I can't do it. I always tell myself, do it. Just like when I'm in the gym and I'm always like pushing myself more and pushing myself more. It's like there's a guy I used to follow. Gosh, what the heck was his name? He was a Navy SEAL. That's one thing my memory goes as I've gotten older. I forget it. But he was really good. And he said that people would be shocked at how much they could push themselves and they don't even realize it. And I said, I'm going to give that a try one day. And normally in the gym, I would do something for 12 or 15 reps. And I really just pushed myself. And 12 or 15 reps was really, really hard to achieve. And I ended up doing 10 more reps than 15, which I thought would be impossible, but I forced it out. And I thought, wow, he's right. There's so much more that we can put up with and we can endure. And so if you could take that mentality and apply it into something that you want to achieve in life, whether it's, building a piece of equipment or accomplishing something else, I mean, all you got to do is apply that same principle. Like, what's going to be your breaking point? And say, I don't have a breaking point. I'm just going to keep going and going and going. And obviously you take care of yourself in between there. But I think that's the biggest thing, is a lot of us think we're failing and we stop sooner than we really can withstand. So if you push yourself more and more and more, you'll find that you're able to achieve more and more and more. And everybody's level of success or idea of success is different. Some people it's financial success. Some people it's relational. Some people it's a creativity. Like, your artwork, I was looking at it, man, you're a great artist. And for you, your success is becoming a great artist, or being able to, do a certain level of creativity with your art. So I think it's all different levels for everybody on what success is. So if we can get up in the morning and say, what's going to make me successful today and what's going to get in the way of that, attitude for me is number one. And if we can't get your attitude right, nothing else is going to really follow, And some people, that bad attitude's really driven them, It's like they follow that bad attitude because they want to get back at somebody, and that's their driving force. But again, that's a negative aspect of it. So there's so many ways you can look at it, when you look at success and, getting up in the morning and what motivates you. And I just think that whatever gets us to get out of bed and be the best we can be, follow that. That's the great motivator right there.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah. Definitely something that I've been, even with my wrestling group, I talk to them every Wednesday, and biggest thing I've been talking to them more, and I really didn't even realize it until now. Really should have realized that when I was younger, was just being in that state of gratitude, and just
right.
being thankful for the little things. If we can be thankful, if we can't even be being gratitude for like the little things, for like having, being able to breathe, being able to move.
Yeah. Yeah.
I was telling, telling a lot of the, and we have a mix. We've got a mix of like fighters and people that's in the military. And so everybody's got different backgrounds. But I was like, look,
Mhm.
if I know there's things that, being in the military, you got to deal with, I understand
Yeah.
that. But when you're in here, if you can't be thankful for just being able to like move around, wrestle,
Mhm.
let go of some stress for one
Yeah.
hour, of feeling better after that. If you can't let go of that, then we've got a we got a problem right there.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
So it's just one of those teaching a lot of those fighters how to just be in gratitude, and just being thankful for the little things. That's something I sort of tell myself every morning. I always go into a reset mode. um
Yeah.
so, and I've been doing that. Actually, I've been doing that for the past year. Every morning I'll actually talk to myself before I go to sleep. But every morning, before my feet hits the ground, I tell myself thank you for a new day.
Mhm.
And it's really just setting setting the day up right. That's
Mhm.
what I want to focus on, is being able to book in and then set it up. And that's something I've been trying to preach more to my to a lot of my wrestlers and fighters, is
Right.
being in that state, that in the correct state. So when you go and you're training, or you're just in your daily life, you're in that sort of in a better state, in a state of gratitude. And I told him, oddly enough, things tend to pop in. Maybe
Right.
opportunities you've been looking for, once you say, what, I'm just in gratitude for just being alive today.
Mhm.
And being thankful, things start to pop in. That resistance is gone. And so really teaching them, and that's something that I really wish I would have learned when I was younger. Now I'm really learning it. And it's just learning how to be in gratitude. I mean, there's things that I'm striving for, there's things that I'm working on. But right now, I'm just in gratitude of having a home, being healthy,
Yeah.
having a sound mind, you know just
Yeah.
little things like that. I do a lot of volunteer work with the homeless, and
Mhm.
see a lot
Oh,
of
good. Yeah.
military vets, and people that's just on the streets. And it's and talking to them and hearing their stories
Yeah.
is really puts things in perspective really quick, especially when you when you feel like you're having a bad day. um
Yeah.
that can be really relative compared to someone else
Right. Right.
that's just trying to find somewhere warm.
Yeah.
So yeah. So creative tips for our audience. What is a creative tip or tips that you can share with our audience?
Well, for me, one of the things I've found is I'm a very organized, very regimented type of guy, and a lot of times in my life, I would put focus and emphasis on the responsibilities in life first. So I'd get up in the morning and I would do my bills, and then I would, organize my workout, and I would do all these things that were everyday life things that are organizational and just require discipline and things like that. And what I found is, as I got later in the day and I wanted to be creative and then think of my equipment that I want to design, my creativity was gone. So I found, for me, if I start my day out with my creativity, and my wife is the same way, she's a writer. If we start our day out with our creativity, when you're fresh, you just got up, your mind isn't tired, you can be far more. I found that I can be far more creative. She has, when you start the day that way. And I approach my day with my creativity first. And then later on in the day, I do all my busy, responsible work, which is what kind of killed and stifled my creativity later in the day, because I was tired from doing all that other stuff. And then when it came time to be creative, like, man, I just want to rest,
Yeah.
And so I found that if I can do all my creative stuff in the morning, first thing, and then later on in the day, do just my busy, responsible work, it's just a good balance. Because I just found that the more I put into mindless, mundane, everyday affairs, it just zaps my creative energy. And I read somewhere too that that is the case. So a lot of us, like a lot of people, will just go to, like, I think people like that write books. A lot of them will go to a cabin in the woods somewhere, and they just hang out there. They detach from the world completely, and they just let the environment take them over. nature take them over, and they just, all their creativity comes out. And some people do it through, like, I know, I was listening to Rogan, one of his podcasts, and he was saying that, a lot of people use psychedelics because it can really dig deeper into their mind. I don't go that far, but I'm just saying, whatever makes you creative, follow it and do it. It's like, for me, it's just starting my day out with all my creativity, and a good cup of coffee helps too.
Oh yeah.
Just to keep, it just really amps, I don't want to say amps me up, but it just seems like it kickstarts my mind, And I think if I had to give the two tips, those are the best ones. A good night of sleep is important too. You can't be creative when you're really tired and you're cranky. So I try to get a good night's sleep, and I try to, just be creative first thing in the morning.
Yeah, that's awesome. Hey, well, you know what? I'm gonna say quick shout out. Speaking of coffee, quick shout out to Elevate Coffee Trading. I actually just made a cup of coffee for this podcast, and Elevate Coffee Trading is one of my sponsors. So quick shout out to them, based out of the Dallas, Texas area. So great coffee, and they help support the Creative Brew. So quick shout out to them.
Yeah, cool.
But yeah, so going into before we sign off, like words of wisdom. What are some words of wisdom that you feel like could resonate with someone's heart, spirit, their mind? What are those words of wisdom?
Well, I think for me, it's like, it's trying to understand another person's perspective. So when something goes wrong in my life, or somebody does something I don't like, I try to think of a reason why they would have done that, instead of taking it personally. So and my wife has been another one who's made me think that way. She's been great in my life, and bringing me down to humanity, so to speak. So what I try to do in life is I try to see everything from someone else's perspective. Why did they do what they did? If it offended me, so to speak, were they really doing that towards me? And I look back to when I was a policeman, somebody also told me that too, is, when you're out there in the field, don't get upset or offended if somebody says something to you. More than likely, they're saying it to your uniform. And, unless you're a real idiot. But I found that, it is the case, right away, when you see a lot of police, there's a negative connotation towards them nowadays. And if you saw that same person and they didn't have a uniform on and you didn't know they were a cop, you wouldn't be that way towards them. So he always would tell me, don't take it personally. It's 99 times out of 100, they're yelling at your uniform, not you. And if you take it personally, these people, when you go home, they're going to shower with you, they're going to eat dinner with you, they're going to have be in your mind constantly if you're going to let them eat away at you. So I try to, instead of getting upset with people, I try to look at it from their perspective as to why they're doing what they're doing. The other thing too is, I think it's also important that we try to give back as much as we can, So I try to find different, ways that I can help people, or lend my time, so to speak, and be more giving. And again, I gotta, my wife has been the best person in my life as far as making me a better person. She's made me realize all these things. And I think as guys, a lot of times, that old adage you hear now, there's toxic masculinity. I think a lot of us is, you're being a wrestler yourself and growing up in a very competitive, very warrior type activity, we tend to get hardened a lot of times. And, I don't know about you, but my wife has softened me up. And I don't know if you seem like you're a pretty even keel, laid back dude. And I think that, someone's probably worked on you a little bit as well, I'm sure.
Well, there's been a lot of people that's worked on me. A lot of people.
Yeah.
Oddly enough, I think my wife is tougher than me. She can be the tough one. I'm usually like the sort of laid back.
Okay.
So oddly enough, I've always sort of been like that.
Yeah.
Now
Well, that's good.
I usually do a lot of I know I love doing yoga and meditation and prayer and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So I think a lot of that stuff sort of just sort of creates a little even keel. And it's actually helped me out really with my wrestling and just training. Is learning how to sort of keep that sort of even keel to where I don't get too, tightened or
Amped up.
too, hyped up or anything like that. And I think it's helped me out tremendously. So yeah, my wife, I think I've probably rubbed a little bit more on her than,
Oh,
now,
okay.
now she has toughened me up a little bit, but yeah, that's, yeah, so which sort of odd. It's one of those where like people, it's weird because like people all the time, people think I look like Michael J. White. And I mean, literally, people will stop and like, hey, can I get your autograph? Like, are you Michael J.
Really?
White? And I'm like, no,
Yeah, yeah,
that is
yeah,
not
yeah, yeah.
me.
I could see it a little bit, not a
Yeah,
lot, but I
yeah, no,
mean,
I was like,
yeah,
but
yeah, that's weird.
yeah, it's one of those where she's definitely yeah, toughed me up a little bit, and vice versa. I've sort of gotten her sort of laid back a little bit.
Sure, sure.
But yeah, it's I think it's always complimentary. You always, especially in marriage. I mean,
Yeah,
and we always have our pros and cons, but you
sure.
at the end of the day, we make each other a better person in
Yeah, yeah,
some small way. So, but yeah,
yeah,
those are some great words of wisdom. I mean, it's something that I think people need to hear, um, and I really think that will connect with somebody
hmm
that's listening. So yeah, I mean, before we sign off, actually, before we sign off, what was is there any kind of just and you could probably explain it. Was there any kind of like little blooper reel that you had like when you were doing, creating Mortal Kombat,
Mortal
or you were
Kombat.
doing the movements and stuff like that for the game? Was there kind of like little like just blooper like, wow, I can't believe we just did this, or
Yeah, if you go online, you could find them. A lot of the kids will send them to me. And when we did mythologies, I was filming with a guy named Rich DeVizio. He played a character called Quan Chi in Mortal Kombat mythologies. He was also Baraka and a few others. But in that game, we actually, what's weird is Mortal Kombat, all the games, every one of them, none of us were in the studio together. We were all digitized separately. And the only one where we actually were together was Mortal Kombat Mythologies, The Adventures of Subzero, where we actually had acting scenes in this middle. Like if you got to a certain level, you had Quan Chi, you had Raiden, you had Serena, and you had all of us coming together in these scenes and doing like little acting skits. So when we did Mortal Kombat Mythologies, there were a lot of outtakes in there where like I remember the one character, Serena, Leah, she kept messing up her lines and we'd have to do them over again. And then Rich DeVizio had these big spikes sticking up out of his costume and he'd run into the camera all the time or he'd say a line wrong. And it's pretty funny when you look at it. Like a lot of them too, I didn't have too many bloopers. But like I remember one of them, I was trying to walk up this ladder and it's just like a 3-rung ladder. I'm supposed to be like looking into this big chasm and I'm stepping sideways and they want me to do this like martial arts, like Bruce Lee walk up these steps and my foot hit the other foot and I tripped over this thing. And watching it, you'd think I'd be falling in this bit, but I fall like 2 steps onto the floor. And it just looks really corny, It's just really kind of ridiculous things, but it happens a lot in filming. And that's why the editors are great. They cut all of it out. I love watching the blooper reel. It's pretty funny. There's a lot of bloopers on it. It's Vince Vaughn. I did a scene with Vince Vaughn in the breakup, and it ended up in the deleted scene because I guess my scene was in the bar with him, and it was more of a comedic scene. But I guess in the movie they decided to go more of a serious route. So they liked the scene, and so they put it in the extended reel or whatever. But Vince Vaughn is just. He likes to do his scenes. He does one take with the lines, and then he says, "Okay, everybody, we're just going to do whatever now," and everybody improvises. So you come back in, and he'll throw a different line at you that's not in the script, and you got to come back with something, So it's kind of fun. So I'm sure there's a ton of bloopers on that type of acting, but Mortal Kombat was more of a script, and you try to stay on it as much as you can, and we didn't have too many, but if you go on YouTube and you Google it or whatever, you could find a ton of them on there. And they're not anything really crazy, but if you're a real big fan of Mortal Kombat, you'll really like them because you'll see the game and you'll know oh, I remember that sequence. Oh, that happened, So it's kind of fun to watch. So some of the scenes were like, I remember Rich was on one of them, you have to fly through the air and look like you're doing this flying kick, but you can't, even though you could do it, you can't do it for the digitizing because it won't show up right, because it'll look real choppy and piece. So they have to literally film you in just sitting on this board with your leg out, and then they move you, digitize you. And so Rich was sitting on this board and he kept falling off backwards because they had, you can't have much of the board in there because it's going to show up. So they'll just try to wipe it out with the green screen. So they give you this little piece of wood to sit on, and you got to try and balance on it and stick your leg out in your arm. And it's just really awkward. So I could see how he kept falling off of it, but it's just kind of funny to watch, because I know what's happening just from doing it. But when you're, a gamer watching some of these bloopers, it's funny to see that, here's this move that they were doing all the time in the game, and they couldn't even hardly do it in the actual studio, but that was the thing about Mortal Kombat 2. A little insight was, you when you watch it, the kicks are really fast and blah, 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 but you couldn't do them fast, because if I did them full speed, like when I first went into the studio and I would kick full speed, they go, whoa, you can't do that. I'm like, what do you mean? I said, you want me to throw a kick? I'm not going to just lob this kick. And they go, no, we want you to lob it, because when you lob it, it's going to show up on camera very good, and we can speed it up. So when you do a kick, it's really hard a lot of times to kick really high. And if you don't have the flexibility and the strength to get your leg up there and move it, like literally when you would throw the kick, it would be like this. It wouldn't be like rifling the kick out,
Yeah.
So if you didn't have the ability to do that with balance and strength and just, flexibility, you couldn't do it. And I think that's one of the things that helped me with getting more of the roles, because I could really hold my leg up high and I could move in a slower motion, and you're able to do more moves that way than some of the other ones where it's really hard to do a spinning kick really slow, because you have to use momentum to spin around and do that. But I was able to spin around in a slower fashion and lift my leg up and whip it around, because that's what I practiced a lot when we do it. Your strength move is just, to be able to not just throw your leg up, to be able to hold it up. Because if you can hold your leg up in that flexibility position, you can move it, you can create speed from that. So that's one of the ways when training, as a lot of people don't realize, is to get the flexibility first, because once you get the flexibility, you can work the speed. The speed will come through movement. But if you don't have the flexibility, you got to use momentum a lot of times to carry you through a motion. That's the way it is with martial arts. So that's why you see a lot of guys really working on their flexibility real hard. So that's just a little tidbit.
Yeah. Interesting.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, before we sign off, how can people get in touch with you for any kind of personal training, or get in touch with you for, potential, gigs, signings? What's the best way to get in contact with you?
Probably through Instagram or Facebook. Instagram, I'm Subzero Unmasked, is my handle on there. Facebook, you can just find me under John Turk Actor, I think is what I have that under. They'll say John Turk, TURK Actor. And then I also have my website, which is, I have two of them. One is for personal training and one is to sell my workout programs. My personal training one in San Diego is personaltrainersandiego.com. And then my one for my workouts is fearlessfitness.com. So thefearlessfitness.com. So if you go on the products page, you can click on that. You can see all the workouts that you can buy. There's men, women, different, types of workouts for whatever type of body you want. But yeah, so that's pretty much it, man.
All right, good deal, good deal. Well, hey, once again, hey, thank you for coming on, and sharing your story, sharing your creative journey, where you are now. And so, like I said, it's always a pleasure, having someone as illustrious as you come onto the show. And I know I've joked before. I know my little brother probably laughed at it. I know I used Subzero a lot of times in Mortal Kombat. Now I had a little go-to move that I would hit everybody with. I hit the little freeze blast and then the foot sweep, and that was the only thing I could do. But that used to annoy my little brother so much. So I just wanted to plug that in, mess with him a little bit. But hey, once again, there's various ways of supporting this show, and this show will also first of all, it'll be available pretty soon on a future release. This will be available on our this will be available on our podcast platforms, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, SoundCloud, and then the video portion will be up on my YouTube page for anyone to view. And then snippets will be available on Instagram and Facebook. Also, too, my radio show on heliumradio.com. This episode will be released on there on a future episode as well. That's based out of the St. Petersburg, Florida area. So that'll be on the radio show pretty soon. If you want to support this show, you can go to www.buymeacoffee.com/The Creative Brew, and for the price of a cup of coffee, you can help support this show, this episode, as well as future episodes. So just want to give a shout out to that too as well. So, but other than that, hey, thank you, John. Thank you for having coming to the show, sharing your journey. And other than that, hey, this has been another great episode of The Creative Brew. Be creative, stay inspired. Only coping mechanism was to get blooded, but it's a different day, beginning of a new era. I gotta make a change, yo.